look at the Golden State Warriors, the question that comes to mind is what's next? They have a top 10 player in Steph Curry, but he's also 36. They have a solid team, but it's middle of the pack. They'll most likely make the playoffs with 45 to 48 wins, but they'll be an 8th seed and get bounced in the first round without making much noise in the playoffs. So the question, as I said, is what's next? What do they do? Do they add players? Do they take away players? Do they stand still? And throughout history, we've seen three teams that have been the same exact situation as the Warriors, and they've all gone completely different directions. The first two options are options, but the third one is my favorite one. So the first example we've seen are the Boston Celtics. When the Celtics won the finals in 2008, everyone was super pumped up because they finally did it. They finally won a championship since the Larry Bird era. They had Paul Pierce, they had Ray Allen, they had Kevin Garnett. But the Celtics front office and organization saw the writing on the wall. They knew that this team wasn't sustainable. They knew they had to make moves after winning the championship. So what did they do? They let Ray Allen walk. They traded Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett in the infamous trade with the Brooklyn Nets that actually landed the Boston Celtics a plethora of picks and set them up for all the success they've had over the past decade, including the championship they won this year. Why is that? Well, they drafted Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with the picks they had. They also used one of the first rounders to acquire Kyrie Irving and really group together a solid team for the Boston Celtics. But that was a hard decision for the Celtics to make. But they were able to make it because they thought ahead, but also the players they had on their roster were players that didn't mean too much to the franchise. Well, what do I mean by that? Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, they weren't drafted by the Celtics. They came in free agency. So the ties weren't super tight like Steph Curry is to the Warriors, who was drafted by Golden State. Then you had Paul Pierce, who was a dynamic player for the Boston Celtics, and him and Kevin Garnett will easily have their jerseys retired in the rafters, but they won one championship. They weren't the heart and soul of the Celtics. They didn't make Boston Boston. That was Larry Bird, and that was Bill Russell. So those are players that were a little bit easier to get rid of. Steph Curry, not so much. He's the heart and soul of the Warriors, won 4 championships, and he made the Warriors the Warriors. He was bigger than the organization, still is, will always be, and he's bigger than basketball. So the pathway for that option would be, well, you move Steph Curry, you get a ton of picks. Hopefully you look out like Boston and you only miss the playoffs 1 year, which is the first year that trade happened. And then you build your future and you contend year in and year out. But it's not that simple, as I mentioned, because Steph Curry is a heart and soul, and you can't just move off a player like that unless he specifically demands to be moved, which, in all honesty, will never happen. The second option would be the Lakers Kobe route. You can see the connection with this team a little bit easier because Kobe Bryant is a top 10 player of all time, just like Steph Curry is. Kobe Bryant was bigger than the Lakers, which is a near impossible thing to do considering the Lakers have so much history, but he was. Steph Curry, bigger than the Warriors. Kobe Bryant didn't want to be traded, so he stayed. Steph Curry doesn't want to be traded, so he's going to stay in Golden State. Both players were near the back end of their years when we're talking about this example. And what did the Lakers do? Well, they said, okay, Kobe, we'll keep you around, but Paul Gasol left in free agency at 33 years old. Steve Nash retired. Dwight Howard left. And the Lakers stuck it out with Kobe Bryant, but they didn't do anything to help him. They brought in a bunch of young guys to the draft, Julius Randle, D'Angelo Russell, Jordan Clarkson, and they bottomed out. They went 27-55, 20-60, 21-61. They just weren't a good team those last 3 years of Kobe Bryant's era. If you're the Warriors, you're in the same situation. You have 34-year-old Draymond. There's a trade market. Do you move off of him? Lakers want him. The Grizzlies want him. I'm sure there's other teams that want him, but you can move off of him. But do you really want to go that route? Do you want to leave an all-time great in your team, not build around him, have your entire team bottom out for the next couple of years? And at what cost? We saw the Lakers do it, and sometimes teams get lucky in the draft, but they didn't. They drafted Randall, they drafted D'Lo with top picks, and they didn't really turn out for the Lakers. Or are you going to try and just bottom out with a top 10 player? And also, just from a fanship standpoint, that's not fun. I remember watching those years with Kobe Bryant, and it was miserable. It was sad seeing an all time great, a top 10 player of all time, could be higher, just at the end of the day, at the minimum, a top 10 player of all time, live out his last 3 years of a career losing and playing bad on a bad team. You don't want to see that happen. And if you're the Warriors, you see that, and you don't want that to happen. If you're going to have Steph Curry on your team, you might as well try and win some games. So why bottom out? So I think you go like that direction and you say, well, let's learn from the Lakers. Instead of being the Lakers, Let's learn from them. Let's not go that direction. So the first one, the Celtics, you can't really move Curry. The second one, the Lakers, why bottom out like them? And the third one is the option the Warriors should pursue. And ironically, they already tried pursuing phase one of this team. And this is the San Antonio Spurs with Tim Duncan. In Tim Duncan's final years with the San Antonio Spurs, they were competing year in and year out, and they were just getting better and better like fine wine. Ironically, the Warriors tried doing phase one of what the Spurs did with Tim Duncan, which was what the Spurs did in 2014 when they won the NBA Finals. They kept their cornerstones around Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan. And then they got younger. They drafted Kawhi Leonard, who was a huge factor in them winning the 2014 finals because he was so good defensively. Well, what did the Warriors try doing? They kept their cornerstones around Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, rode them out the past 2 years, and then they try to get younger, ironically drafting Jonathan Kuminga, who has a lot of player comparisons to Kawhi Leonard. Unfortunately for the Warriors, instead of winning the finals, they went on and lost in the play-in last year, and then they let go of Klay Thompson. So phase one is over. Did it work out with the Spurs? No. But did they try it? Yes. But if you remember correctly, what did the Spurs do after winning the finals? Well, they kept competing, winning 50 to 60 games a year. And in the last year of Tim Duncan's career, the Spurs were anticipating him to actually pick up his player option and play the next 2 years. But in that final year of Tim Duncan's actual career, the Spurs said, you know what? We're going to keep our cornerstones around Manu, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan. We have a top 10 player in Kawhi. Let's go out there and get another top player in the league. And they signed LaMarcus Aldridge, took him away from Portland, and made a 67-15 record in that final year with Tim Duncan. And the Golden State Warriors can easily enter phase two of the San Antonio Spurs. Right now, as it stands, the rosters are extremely comparable. The Spurs have a top 10 player in Kawhi Leonard. The Golden State Warriors have a top 10 player in Steph Curry. The San Antonio Spurs have their cornerstones of their entire dynasty run, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. The Warriors do as well, Steph Curry and Draymond Green. When you look at the Spurs, they had great depth. Guys like Patty Mills, Danny Green, Marco Bellinelli. You look at the Warriors, they have great depth as well. Brandon Podziemski, D'Anthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson. The Spurs had awesome chemistry because their guys were together for so long. Look at the Warriors, they have great chemistry too because their roster has a lot of turnover into this season. The last thing that the San Antonio Spurs had that the Warriors have is awesome coaching. Greg Popovich was the best coach in the NBA at the time. Steve Kerr is a top 5 coach in the NBA right now. The only missing link is that LaMarcus Aldridge. Who's the second best player on the Warriors? They don't have that second star on their team. And the ability to get that second star on the Warriors isn't as hard as it seems. Look at the free agent market, it's evaporated. There's no second star available. You look at the trade market, there's not a lot of names on the table, but there is one, and that's Lauri Markkanen, and he is very attainable. You need to offer picks for him, so that's great if you're the Warriors because that means you can keep your team how it is. You don't need to blow it up. You don't need to move a Jonathan Kuminga. You don't need to move a Brandon Podziemski to get him. You just need to trade picks to keep your roster intact. The Warriors have 3 first-round picks available. I say you offer all those to the Utah Jazz. There might need to be another first incorporated in there. So you call somebody like the Washington Wizards, say, hey, we can offer you a few seconds to get a package going so you can send another first-round pick to the Utah Jazz. The Jazz get 4 first-round draft picks. The Warriors get their second star in Lauri Markkanen, and now they're cooking. And you might say, well, Markkanen is not a top 20 player in the NBA, but he was the number 1 option in Utah. And when you're the number 1 option, I think it's a lot harder to be the number 1 option on a team than be a number 2 option. And I believe if you're Markkanen and you join the Warriors and you're not the number 1 option anymore, it allows you to be even better than what you used to be because A, you're not getting as much attention on you, right? Defenses aren't going to game plan solely to stop you. They have to worry about guys like Steph Curry. And secondly, Markkanen's joined a roster, an offensive scheme that fits him like a glove. The Warriors like to stretch out the court and have a lot of ball movement. Lauri Markkanen is a stretch 4. That's a piece the Warriors have been missing all the time. Draymond Green can't shoot like he used to, and Trey Jackson-Davis can't shoot the 3 ball. He's great inside, but he can't shoot. You bring Markkanen in, he can stretch the court. He has a great 3-point shot, and he can play a perfect role in this offense. And there's also going to be a lot of ball movement that's going to be extremely dynamic, allowing him to get open, get good looks. And as we all know, he can also crash the boards and work extremely well inside the paint. So I think this team fits Markkanen so well that I don't know the ceiling for him. I genuinely think he could get better on the Warriors being the second option. And when you look at the past 6 years of the NBA and the past 6 champions, They've all been different, but they've all been built the same. You have a superstar, a star, and great depth around him. The Warriors have a superstar in Steph Curry. They'll have a star in Larry Markkinen, and they'll have great depth around him with the guys like I mentioned before, Draymond Green, Brandon Pobzinski, Kyle Anderson, and co. On top of that, they'll have an identity on offense, and I think this will go from a 45, 48 win team to a 50 to 55 win team, allowing them to be a top 4 seed in the West, maybe a top 5 seed in the West, and allow for them to have a chance against anybody any day of the week, any night. So if you're the Warriors, you go and you acquire that second star. You go get Markkinen if you can. You go all in on him and you bring him in. All in all, I don't think the Warriors have the possibility of going the Celtics route. They should never go the Lakers route, and they should continue attacking phase 2 of the Spurs route. You guys let me know what the Warriors should do. Is there another team that's comparable to them? Is there another move that should be made? Should they try to contend? Should they stay where they're at? Should they take a step back? Let me know your thoughts. Please subscribe. And as always, I really appreciate everyone that listens. Have a great day.